Oh, hey, how's it going? This is Webby, not Eddie.
And I'm Eddie. And today we're going to do a.
Paddle review.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited for this.
I am too. I love doing paddle reviews. We haven't done one in a while, so I figured this would be a perfect time to do that. And it just happens to work out because we got a paddle sent to us.
That's right. So I think we're going to start with the unboxing, give you guys our first impressions, cut to us each playing independently on the court with it, and then wrapping back up for our final thoughts. Does that sound good to you, Webby?
I like it. That sounds perfect. And today, the paddle that we're going to review came from the fine folks at Volair. They sent us each the Mach 1, and I am very excited to try it out. I've heard a lot of buzz about it. I have never played with it, and I'm looking forward to doing so.
That's right. And I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with the actual packaging. Typically, when you buy a paddle, it doesn't come in something nice like this. So I got to say, first impressions, I'm actually pretty impressed with it.
Definitely some points there for packaging.
Should we open it?
Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that it comes in bubble wrap. And, wow, comes in a box with the label on top of it as well. I'm just impressed with the whole presentation of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. That is a very nice looking box. I like the branding on there.
Get it ready. 1, 2,
Okay.
3, rip. Oh,
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Same thing happened
All
to
right.
both of us. Points docked for the perforation. I always, that's the biggest thing in a paddle review is how is
Yep.
the perforated packaging.
5 hours later.
All right. Oh, check it out.
Oh.
Andiamo!
And for those of you that don't know, this is Julian Arnold's signature paddle. I'm not sure if we already said that or not, but it is.
Great job throwing Andiamo in there. It's just something that adds a personal touch, which I really appreciate. And right when you open it up, you got a nice little card from this handsome fella named Julian
That's
Arnold.
right. Oh, it looks like it's autographed too. This is probably the most enjoyable unboxing I've ever done just because like they really put time and effort into this, you can tell. And it's very cool. And I still haven't seen the paddle yet, and I'm already having a great experience.
Before we get to the paddle, do you have a couple other little fun trinkets in there? I know how much
I
you love your
do.
trinkets.
Everybody knows I sweat like crazy, so I will definitely be getting some good use out of these sweatbands. These will probably last me a half a game before I have to swap them out. Got a couple Volair stickers. That's cool.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Andiamo!
Yes.
Oh, that is so cool, man.
Come on, now or never. Come on, now or never. Why?
That is awesome, man.
Already really impressed. I mean, the paddle could absolutely suck, which I don't think it will. But the fact that this stuff is included, I mean, that's really cool. Good job for you, Volair. I love that you're thinking about this as a full product rather than simply just a paddle. You focus on the presentation. Very well done so far.
That was a surprise to me, and they're super fun. And who doesn't love pushing a button?
Andiamo!
So you just get a big button,
Come on,
and you get to hear
now or never.
Julian Arnold's awesome voice saying "Andiamo." I love it. Let's go ahead and do the big reveal. Nice. It's even got a paddle cover. I like that.
I know I'm teasing you guys. I'm opening the zipper. Nope, close it up. Open the zipper a little bit. Show you the goods. Nope. To me, the biggest thing when I pick up a paddle is I want to see how it feels in the hand. And I got to tell you, this feels great. It feels balanced. The grip feels very nice in the hand. I do like that this paddle feels like it's longer than a standard pickleball paddle. Very impressed. What are your initial thoughts?
It's got Julian Arnold's signature on there. And like you said, I like the handle a lot. I don't know about you. I feel like it's a little thicker than a lot of paddles that like come with the paddle by default, which I like. I like a thicker paddle. I typically add over grips to mine to make them feel thicker in addition to the grip. But this immediately feels good. Like I feel like I don't need to add over grip as far as like the circumference of the handle. It's a little bit of a longer handle, so that seems like it'd be great for people that like to do two-handed backhands.
And I do want to let you guys know, Webby and I were given these paddles. We were sent them from Volair, but that's not going to stop us from giving you guys our true, honest opinion about these products.
We'll talk about the pros, talk about the cons, but first impressions are great to me. I think it's a very nice-looking paddle, feels great. You can just tell when you hold a paddle, like if it's made good and if it's a nice sturdy paddle. And this feels like a nicely made paddle.
With any unboxing, the true test is the sniff test. So on the count of three,
right.
let's give it a good old sniff, and we'll share with you guys what we think. 1, 2, 3. Oh,
Okay.
all right. Does that not remind you
Interesting.
of childhood? It's a combination of drinking out of the water hose versus those rubber balls that we used to play dodgeball with in gym class, the red ones that when you got whacked in the face would hurt and leave an imprint. That's what this reminds me of.
So I get a little hint of the rubber tire smell.
When it comes to picking the paddle for you, how it smells is one of the most important things. And this one passes the sniff test. Would you agree?
That's right. It absolutely passes the sniff test. Not enough people do the sniff test, and it's such a crucial thing when it comes to pickleball paddles that it's an underrated thing.
Julian, what do you think?
Andiamo.
Well, there you go. Julian approves as well. I'm really anxious to get out in the court and play with it. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've said before, like it doesn't really matter how it looks, how it feels, and how it smells. What really matters is how it is on the court, how it reacts to the ball, how you feel when playing with it. And I'm definitely looking forward to it. One thing we didn't mention yet is mine is the 16 millimeter version. I know they make a 14 millimeter and a 16 millimeter. Which one did you end up getting?
I have the 16 millimeter as well. Well, let's go out on the court and hit with it. Once we're done with that, we're going to circle back. We're going to give you our final thoughts. We'll go over some of the specs on this, the weight, maybe how it's constructed and all that, and give you our final thoughts.
Several days later.
All right, we are back, and I have spent about 8 hours on the court with the Volair Mach 1 paddle. And before we get into what our final thoughts are, I thought it'd be good to go over some of the detailed specs about the paddle. The one that we have is the 16 millimeter paddle, and the average weight for that is 7.9 ounces. The paddle length is 16.5 inches. The paddle width is 7.5 inches. The thickness is 16 millimeters. The handle length is 5.5 inches. The grip circumference is 4.3 inches. The core material is polypropylene honeycomb, and the paddle face material is raw T700 carbon fiber.
And as Webby mentioned, it does come in a 14 millimeter and 16 millimeter option. We both had the 16 millimeter option. You might want to go with 14 millimeter if you want a little bit more power. The thinner core gives a little bit more pop to it. The 16 millimeter has a little bit more control to it, which is kind of why I like to go with the 16 millimeter option. You can buy it just standalone paddle for $159.99, or you can get the signature gift box, which you saw us unbox earlier. That includes some Volair bonuses for $179.99. So $20 more gives you a bunch of cool features. And I got to say, Webby, I think from a price point perspective, this paddle is priced very well compared to its competitors. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a very great price. I like the fact that they give you the option of getting just the paddle for an even cheaper price, or you can bump it up a little bit and upgrade to the gift set.
But enough about the specs and the different options you can get with it. I want to jump into the review. And anytime I try out a paddle, the first thing I want to do is test out the touch. And I typically do it by dinking. I had great touch and control with this paddle right here. I like to do typically a slice dink when I'm hitting for my backhand. It handled very well. Sometimes with paddles like this, the ball will actually kind of like roll off the face for me a little bit if I put a little bit too much slice. And I feel like just the way that this face is created, it held the ball very nicely. I had great touch, great control. From a control perspective, I give this thing 5 out of 5 stars.
It took me a little bit of getting used to at first. I don't know if it's because the shape of the paddle is a little different than what I'm used to, but when I first started dinking around, I was hitting it into the net a little more than I like, but once I played with it more and got used to it, it felt really, really nice. And after, like I said, I've spent 8 hours with it, I felt like my control was really, really good with it, and I am very happy with it. And I would say 4.5 out of 5 for me. Just because at the beginning, because there are some paddles where I feel like immediately I play really good with. This one I didn't. I don't think that's necessarily the fault of the paddle. It just I had to get used to it. Once I got used to it, I thought it had great control, and I was very happy with it.
Well, after I test out the control, I typically like to test out the power, right? Doing ground strokes or hitting volleys up at the line. And I got to say, I was expecting this paddle, because I had such good touch with it, to lack in power. And that was not the case. I felt like I had plenty of power with this paddle. Now, I've been playing with the Black Ace a little bit, and this obviously doesn't generate as much power as that paddle does. But what you sacrifice with a paddle like a Black Ace is perhaps it's a little bit more challenging to control and have touch with your soft game. But I feel like this is a great balance of it. I currently played with the Volair Mach for the last couple years, and I like that paddle for similar reasons to this. It had great control, but also had great power. And this one, I put on the exact same level as that. I would give it 4.5 out of 5 stars when it comes to power.
I'll admit I was very impressed with the power on this one as well. To me, this is where it shined for me, is the amount of power that it gave me, because I also wasn't expecting a ton of power just because we went with the 16 millimeter, which is known more for control and not as much power. But yeah, I felt like I had great power with this thing. And like when I did the ground strokes, when I would serve, when I would do overheads, I was very happy with the amount of power generated. I still had good control with it. And I also would give it 4.5 out of 5.
Great. Well, let's talk through some of the pros that I feel like this paddle has. The first thing is I do like the longer handle. So I've been playing with, as I mentioned, the Electrum Model E for a while now, and it's an elongated paddle. I like having that additional reach. I know you typically sacrifice a little bit of width when it comes to having an elongated paddle, but this is a great, I feel like, compromise. Because you do have the longer handle, it does give you the ability to put 2 hands on the paddle, which is something that I'm actually working towards, which is a 2-handed backhand. I appreciate that. It does give you more reach. I'm not a long or tall guy, so to have a little bit of reach, I think helps. And it does put the sweet spot exactly where I like to hit it, which is a little bit further away than perhaps the traditional paddle. In addition to that, the price. I would put this paddle up there with paddles that are well over $200. And I tell you what, this thing holds its own against them, and I think it's at a very reasonable price point. 5-6 years ago, I might disagree because this would have been at the very high end of all paddles that were out there. But now, considering the market has changed a little bit and it's like nothing to spend over $200 on a paddle, to grab this for $160, I think is a great value.
Yeah, I also liked the handle a lot, surprisingly, because I'm not typically a big fan of the longer handle, just because I don't do the 2-handed backhand shot. And it's kind of funny because as I was playing with this, I started trying to do some 2-handed backhands because I was like, man, it just seems like it's perfect for a 2-handed backhand. So if you see some of the footage that I recorded of me using it, I hit a couple 2-handed backhands and they've actually felt really good. And I really do think I want to try learning to do the 2-handed backhand more. So if I continue using this paddle, which I do think I will, I am going to try to incorporate 2-handed backhands more and try to work on learning how to use that better. But I thought the handle was great. Earlier, I mentioned how I struggled when I first used the paddle and I needed to get used to it. And I think maybe it could be because of the longer handle than what I'm used to and the shape of the paddle. But once I got used to it, I was doing great with it. And I grew to like the long handle. And I really do think it's going to cause me to start trying to use more 2-handed backhand shots in the future. Another thing I liked a lot about it is the grittiness of it, because I feel like this was a little bit grittier than the paddles I normally use. And I could really tell when I was hitting the ball, like just the way that it came off of it, it really encouraged me to add more topspin. You can see kind of like the ball fragments on the paddle. I feel like that's an indicator of how gritty it is.
Yeah, and to add a little bit to that, typically when I get a new paddle, I add an overgrip. I do like the Gamma overgrips, but this one, I did not feel the need to add it. I like the grip that came with it, and I'm going to continue to play with it. Maybe down the road, if it starts to get a little bit more worn, I might add an overgrip. But for right now, I do not feel a need to do that. Well, let's talk about the cons of this paddle. And honestly, I didn't really come up with anything that's a con for me. What I will tell you, though, is the surface definitely has some grit. If you were to compare this to perhaps some of the PaddleTech paddles, you would definitely feel that this has a much grittier surface. However, I have felt the surface of some other paddles that have come out in the last few years, like my Electrum Model E, or perhaps any of the new Yola paddles, and this one still is not as gritty as that. But that's not really a con. I can't tell the difference when I play with this or what a grittier face paddle can do. I feel like it gave me plenty of spin when I wanted it. It held onto the ball very well. Well, perhaps if I was like a 5-0 or a pro level player, I might notice a difference and I would consider that to be a con. But at my level, I don't. Just an observation.
For me, like you said, at our skill level, I think it's plenty gritty enough. As far as cons for me, really the only thing I could say, which again, I don't think it's really the fault of the paddle, just it took me a little bit to get used to it. It wasn't a paddle that I immediately played good with out of the box, but the more I played with it, the more I liked it, and I've been feeling really good with it.
Final thoughts. I really like this paddle. I've been playing with the Electrum Model E for the last couple years, and I've tried some paddles here and there, but I always have gone back to the Model E. And I will tell you, this is now my new go-to paddle. It doesn't mean I might not go back to the Electrum at some point, but for right now, if I'm reaching in my bag to grab the paddle that I feel the most confident with, this is it. I was not expecting that to happen when I first started playing with the paddle. However, it quickly became very comfortable to me, and I think that's the most important part of having a paddle is how comfortable are you with it? When you go out on the court, you don't want to be thinking about, okay, I need to adjust for this paddle. I need to loosen my grip because this one has a little bit of power. I need to do this or I need to do that. You really just want to go out there and, for me, just focus on playing, having fun, being athletic, strategy, stuff like that, not specifically on how you have to adjust your game for the paddle. And I feel like this paddle fits my game perfectly well. Combine that with the fact that the price point is pretty reasonable for something of this level. I am a big fan. I give this paddle 4.7 out of 5 stars, and it's going to be my go-to paddle for the time being right now.
My final thoughts, I thought this was a great paddle. I mean, it's got a great value. The cost compared to a lot of very comparable paddles, I think, is better than most of those comparable paddles. It performed very well. I definitely plan on using this moving forward when I play singles, because that's where I feel like it really thrived for me. It gave me good power and control, which are the two very important things when it comes to playing singles. I feel like I played great with it for doubles also. I don't know for sure if it's going to be my go-to paddle for doubles immediately. I did better playing singles with it, but like I said, I've only spent like 8 hours with it, so who knows, that could change the more I play with it. Maybe this will become my go-to for doubles, but overall, I think this is a great paddle. I would absolutely recommend it. My overall rating, I would say I would give it a 4.6 would be my overall rating, but very happy with it. I would absolutely recommend it to people that ask me about it. Great paddle.
Well, big thank you to Volair again for sending these to Webby and me to test out, give you our thoughts on. They did not pay us for this review, so we are giving you our true, honest opinion of it. If you guys are interested in picking up one of these, you can go to Volair.com. And I tell you what, I don't think you're going to be disappointed at all. And on that note, I'm Eddie.
And until next time, this is Webby, not Eddie, signing off.
Andiamo!
So yeah.
Come on, now or never.
Sip of water.
Don't f*** it up this time, okay?
All right.